My guest today is Upasna Gautam, product manager at CNN. Upasna is a leading expert on publisher SEO. Publisher SEO is a really interesting niche that focuses on publisher sites which produce a mind-boggling amount of content. Imagine being responsible for ranking hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of existing pages in Google, while creating workflows that a breaking news network like CNN could add thousands of pages every day that are also optimized for search engines. That is the very challenging work publisher SEOs do every day. Upasna is an in-demand speaker who's presented at major SEO conferences including SMX, Pubcon, Inbound, State of Search, and many more. She grew up in my home state of Michigan and went to my alma mater, Michigan State. We'll talk a little bit about her journey from being a biomedical sciences student in Michigan to a marketer now residing in Texas. I highly recommend that you check out Upasna's TED Talk titled Optimizing for the Next Billion. The talk is about how voice search impacts third world countries. We're going to talk a little bit about her TED Talk as well as voice search more broadly. Recently, Upasna offered a free virtual workshop for women in tech interested in presenting at conferences. The response was so positive that she opened a second workshop. That also completely filled up. I recommend that anyone interested follow her on Twitter for future updates. Join me for a talk about publisher SEO, building information architecture, voice search, and where to get good late-night food in East Lansing. Upasna, welcome to Suds and Search. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. I am especially excited about this one. I don't know anything about publisher SEO, so you're my first publisher SEO on here.
Right.
But more importantly, you're my first Michigan State Spartan on here, other than myself. Welcome. I just want to welcome you 100%. I'm going to have, I'm in Long Island, so I'm going to have, or I think the expression is on Long Island. So I'm going to have a Montauk Pilsner while we talk. I hope
like
you
we
guys
should go green, go white cheers, though.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, let's be really obnoxious with that. Yeah, go white. Cheers. I grew up in Southeast Michigan. I grew up just north of Detroit, and then I went to Michigan State. I graduated in 2006. Could we have crossed paths on campus at some point?
We might have. I graduated in 2008. In the middle of 2008. I grew up on the west side of Michigan in Grand Rapids, born and raised there. East Lansing was only 45 minutes away, which is crazy because at that time it seemed like such a long distance. And I live in Texas now, right? So
yeah, right. Yeah.
It seemed like it was a huge deal at that time to like go live on campus at Michigan State, and wonderful experience. But yeah, I bet we crossed paths somewhere.
Yeah, look at us now. A couple of Spartans talking about SEO and everything else. And
oh my God, I know.
I love it.
Amazing.
Well, how did you go from Michigan State to publisher SEO? Give me a little bit of your journey and how you got here.
I absolutely love talking about this particular topic because it was very non-linear and non-traditional.
Cool.
At Michigan State, I went to go study biomedical sciences. I wasn't sure what career I wanted to pursue at that time. It was either a physician or scientist type of background, but I studied, I spent a lot of time only in math and science and like nothing else. So no marketing, no background in search.
Interesting.
Nothing. I didn't even take English classes because I tried to get that all out of the way before I went to college and only took math and science classes for 4.5 years. And my last year of college, I started to open my eyes up to the other world around us. But also at that time, the economy in Michigan was not doing so well. It was 2008. And my dad was actually the one who was an engineer, encouraged me to move out of Michigan and look for jobs in other places like California and Texas. And I took a job continuing with clinical research, but very much at the bottom of the totem pole as a lab rat. In a pharmaceutical company, and it was wonderful. I loved it, but I also decided to take an internship, an unpaid part-time internship at a tiny little web development company in Dallas, just being a generalist, a general data analyst. And that was my first stepping stone into this industry. And very, very long story short, I worked my ass off for 3 months and in hopes that they would hire me full time. And they did. I quit my lab job and that chapter was closed.
Wow.
From there, I already felt like I was so behind because I was 2 years post grad and like I just started a new career then. But it was, again, like a profound moment because I figured out that you have to take it upon yourself to craft and pave that path. And so in that web development agency, that was the first time I ever even heard about SEOs. This was at the end of 2009. So
Wow, okay.
a lot of people who talk about search and like how they've been doing it for like decades. I'm like, I just heard about it 9 years
That's interesting.
ago.
Okay.
And the good thing about it was coming from that like more math and science background. I was like, wait, like this is very logical and practical. I can apply a lot of these principles to it. I know I'll be good at it. I worked at that little web development agency for 2 years, moved on to advertising agency world, and stayed there for 8 years. 8 years in advertising land is like, double that in real life.
Right.
And really got to experience amazing mentorship and client opportunities. So not even into the publisher side yet at all. I spent a lot of that 8 years just being quiet and listening and observing how the mechanics of search and analytics especially work. And there was one thing, again, that perpetuated throughout that decade is there is this like extreme necessity for like logic in this practice, right? Or organization in this process, because when people think of SEO, it's so compartmentalized of like, like think about a keyword, think about a link, think about structured data. And those are all to me, like after going through that, like such small components of a much bigger experience. And again, another long story short, after the 8 years of diving into that with like, and I only worked on enterprise clients for that entire time, which is an amazing opportunity. Moved into publisher SEO with Ziff Davis, where I decided it was a career transformation I wanted to have to move in-house. So that's how I got to that point. And if you want to direct questions to that publisher.
I love it.
Yeah.
I think that's an amazing journey. Like
it's crazy. Yeah.
In 2009, I'd been doing this for like 2.5 years. And like just to go from there to where you are is just amazing. So I thought about publisher SEO a lot. I've been doing SEO for a long time, but this is a world that's totally foreign to me. So I may ask you some kind of newbie questions, but
please do.
The first thing that you're struck by is just the audacity of it. There's got to be like hundreds of pages created. You're now working for CNN. It's got to be like hundreds of pages created every day, and then that has to be managed going forward forever. Am I crazy, or is it very different? Are you still doing keyword research? Are you still using Google Analytics? Are you using a normal CMS? Where does it really get wonky?
Oh my God, those are not newbie questions. Those are amazing questions, and I still like revert to asking myself them to make sure the answer is a good one. But it is very differently nuanced, right? Like we know from like keep publisher SEO out of it for a second when we think of like enterprise versus SMB, right? Yes. It's already so different as far as priorities go. I still think the overarching strategy is similar, and this is where it comes into play. And this is like a topic I've been very passionate about speaking about in the conference circuit virtually this year, which goes into understanding how do you manage and optimize hundreds to thousands. And I know you mentioned hundreds of pages, but we're actually talking like hundreds of thousands of pages versus like 10 to 50 to 100. The disparity is so extreme. But the one thing that I have learned, and I don't coin this or like attribute this to any best practice, it's just what I think works best, is understanding and defining information architecture. And to me, that is like the root of all of this success, whether you're an SMB, whether you're an enterprise, or whether you're a publisher. Publisher is a little more crazy because you're producing content at a much more rapid frequency, right? So it's not like we're breaking news at CNN, so it's like every minute. I do not work on that team. I am the product manager for e-commerce, but still it is coming from a breaking news transformation where it's like, okay, we're not like producing this because this sounds good. It's like we need to get it out because this is like it's news, it's a trend, but also informative and authoritative. Whereas if you're working on like I worked on Ford, for example, for a while, and it's like you can be a little more timely and strategic about it. We don't have time to think about that as much, right? So it's all about bringing it back to the basics and creating organization, especially in a time of chaos like this, where I think marketers, SEOs, even UX architects, and people in higher positions, also like yourself, like it's like, what do you focus on right now? And it doesn't matter if you're a publisher or an enterprise organization, or you're a freelance consultant. If you have a website, the goal of that website is still the same. And that is like, how do you get the user to complete the task in the most efficient way possible? Right. That never changes, no matter what the time is.
So what is the task? Like I guess you want to get product purchases, but even on, I don't know, in your time at PC Mag, would it be like, what does a conversion mean for you in some of these things? Is it time on site? Is it they click on an ad? Like what you serve an ad? I'm not sure.
It's a cop-out answer of it depends on It does. It depends on if you're commerce or not, first of all. But I can always ladder it back to what is the objective for the user, not as a business, but what is the most desired goal that you want the user to achieve when they come to your site? We think about like business objectives a lot, which is like super important and should inform all of those strategies. But what about like the user itself? And if you're coming from SEO, there are actually two users that need to be qualified and quantified. One is Googlebot, right? Yes. So I've been saying this like incessantly in the few conference talks I've given in the past couple of years, is that SEO historically, it does stand for search engine optimization, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't believe that to be accurate anymore, because we're not optimizing for just an engine. Like, it's not about the engine. It's very much an experience that involves multiple different users. And so Googlebot is one user. The actual human being is the other user.
I love it. This is a great point. Yeah.
So, and I encourage you to like spread the word that it's not search engine optimization, but search experience optimization. And the engine is one of those users, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah. But if we get that the engine is also become so much more sophisticated,
right,
and like creepily smart that it's almost like human, but it's still not exactly that. So, I think it starts with this mindset change of, again, whether you're an SMB or a publisher or, an enterprise organization, of just this understanding that SEO, in optimizing for a website is yes, it's dependent on, the resources you have available, but it's ultimately understanding what are the goals you want the users, plural, to achieve when they get to your website. For Googlebot, it's the same, right? Like it's right. Not dynamic. We know what we need to do from a metadata and structured data and linking perspective to make shit work. But like from a user perspective, that is so much more dynamic. We need to understand where they come from, what their behaviors are, what their needs are. And I say experience for that E because user experience architects need to be very much collaborative. And
this is what I was thinking. I was thinking about you guys, and I was like, think about how many people have to be in the room.
exactly.
You need to have like, yeah, a UX person, an actual journalist. Starting to like make a list of things that you would have to know a little bit about, like journalistic ethics and editorial control.
Absolutely.
And how to do all this stuff. And maybe you don't have to be an expert in it, but you kind of have to know a little bit about it, right? I mean, it's like you probably have like a minor in journalism at this point.
I have learned a lot from like the brilliant editors and journalists and staff that I've worked with, but I think from an SEO perspective, like we've usually talked about, always have a good developer, always have a good relationship with your developers, which
yes, good advice.
Oh my God, absolutely maintain that. But from a publisher side, you better have an equally good and positive relationship with your editorial staff, because they're the ones that are powering everything that you do. So yeah, it's of utmost and equal importance.
Okay, and then this is the last thing, and this almost like I almost have anxiety about it. So you have this thing growing, you have this website growing so much, and you're going to want to do certain things. I imagine like internal linking is super important at CNN, and that you need to make sure that you have a good amount of organization, because I went on CNN's site before I got on here. Just the sports section alone or the business section alone is a massive undertaking. How do you make it? And from time to time, you might have to get rid of pages or update pages. How does one even begin to organize all of this information?
I'm glad you said the word organize information, because it's going to go straight back to like the most profound thing I learned in my career in SEO over the past 10 years. And just to kind of expand on that a little bit, like I am no longer an SEO at CNN and Warner. I moved into product management, but I believe that is a very significant career transition for anyone who's looking for it, is because SEO touches everything. Moving into product management is a similar multifaceted experience, but it gives you a little more of a team captain role. So what I learned in that time, especially, of how do you organize all of this information? Yes. 100% the answer to that question is building information architecture. And that is a whole, and I know we don't have that much time to talk about it, but if there was one thing I took away from that 10 years of being specifically in SEO, it is the importance of building that foundation, because that information architecture is a blueprint. It is for the entire digital experience in the domain you want. And I was talking about this in a presentation with C3 on Tuesday, and it's no one knows which team or role it sits in unless you have an information architect on staff, which doesn't happen anymore. It's very rare to actually have and or hire an information architect. It usually sits within UX, but still that role also has a lot of other responsibilities. I think my goal is to empower like SEOs to take it upon themselves to at least understand the importance of what information architecture is. We clearly don't have time to talk about
I know.
A whole nother conversation, but that topic in and of itself is so critical and important, and I feel like just overlooked. And it's more important for large enterprise publisher types of sites, because that is what classifies all the different types of content. It provides organization, it provides structure. And it requires everyone to calm down, step back, and go back to identifying every single thing on the site and in the domain. And it starts with as simple as what you just said before: what is necessary and what is not. What is actually a crucial piece of content or an asset that's necessary and what's not, and classifying it into what qualify an information architect language is as an object or subject, right? Like an object is a content template. A subject is a piece of content that provides context to the object. So again, I wish we had, this is like a whole nother conversation, but the answer is information architecture and working collaboratively within UX, SEO, and product management. And if you have an editorial or content strategist team to help inform that.
Oh, it's unbelievable. I love it. And I think that's a good challenge for every SEO to learn more about this.
Absolutely. And actually, that would be my biggest key takeaway from this, and is what you just said, is as an SEO, like, take it upon yourself to learn about information architecture.
Yeah, take the challenge on. Yeah, I love it.
Totally.
Well, this is going to be a hard transition, but I need to promote something that you did. You did a TED Talk that was just terrific. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing this right. It is Internet Sati. I hope my pronunciation is okay.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what it is and what it has to do with Google Search, or what we usually talk about on this show?
Absolutely. And it's so different across different regional landscapes. But so the word Sati itself means partner, friend. It's an endearing term to use. And Internet Sati in itself means like a partner. And I tried to explain that as best as I could in a couple seconds in that TED Talk, which, my God, seems like a very long time ago.
It was outstanding. Yeah.
I'm sorry, what's that?
It was outstanding. I really have to compliment you.
Thank you so much. It stemmed from this. It actually stemmed from a few talks I gave on voice search here in the United States, where there's a lot of debate about the importance or value of voice search. Mm-hmm. And again, it depends on your business and your goals and your objectives. Like if you're an SMB, if you're a freelance consultant, yeah, this shit probably doesn't matter to you, or it doesn't affect you, and it's fine. But at a global scale, like, voice search is very different in other countries, and especially third world countries that have access to technology versus the United States. I don't want to reiterate the entire talk, and honestly, I don't really remember every bit of it. It was a year ago, but I do believe it is even more relevant now than it was then, because the key takeaway from that being, is voice search relevant or not, right? Like that's a big topic of SEO concern in the United States. Is like, and
year of voice every year, yeah.
Totally, and it's like, voice search is nothing, but okay, sure, maybe it's not, but that's why the title of my talk was optimizing for the next billion, and not optimizing for the United States. And so it does depend where you're coming from. These structures and these technologies function very differently in different parts of the world. India, I use as an example because, I am a first generation immigrant, but I don't know if that really has anything to do with it. I also understand and speak other languages, but when I read and heard that Google Translate was being used there more aggressively with 15 different languages, and they decided to do it in India because it would be most aggressive, and they have to train their language learning models to learn all this shit at one time. And it helped people who didn't know how to read or write. So you have a whole different need state and persona then, right? Of what we deal with in the United States. So that's where the whole "it depends" context comes into play, right? If you're an HVAC company in Austin, Texas, you don't need to concern yourself with that. But that's not where my roles and responsibilities reside anymore, and I do need to think future. And I'm sure a lot of people in the SEO and digital marketing and tech industry, have aspirations to expand to a certain extent, but those nuances aren't discussed, right? So it was more of a platform to discuss you guys, just because it's not like this in the United States doesn't mean it's drastically different somewhere else.
Yeah.
And
There was something you said about like just as the United States is accustomed to 4G and we're about to be into 5G, like a shocking percentage of the world is still in 3G or worse.
2G to 3G actually. Yeah. So like if we're developing, and even like page speed is something like, oh, we always talk about optimizing. Of course. Like we know it's like a standard for like search practice, best practice to optimize for page speed. But have we thought about optimizing for page speed on different technologies, right? Like in different places of the world, on different devices. Yeah. And so that's not, and there actually is documentation from Google like about that stuff, but we talk about like page and insight speeds in a silo without thinking about like this person in India or China is on 2G with this little Android phone. Like, and by the way, like billions of people, literally billions of people live in that area. So we're not being accessible to that, right? So that's why it's not even million. It's like optimizing for the next billion, thinking about just 2 countries in the world that boost our own economy. And I'm coming from an e-commerce standpoint, right? So, but in general, providing like search visibility and content visibility to that part of the world, like they're on different technologies, they're on different devices, they're on different platforms, like that's where that came from.
Well, that's awesome. And we'll definitely link to it in the show notes, and I encourage everybody to check it out.
Cool.
I have to get to that. Yeah, I have to get to like my favorite part, and this is hard to get everything in I wanted to talk to you about. But I have to ask you, this is a Greg Gifford question. I like to tell people he gives me no more context than what I'm going to give you. Okay. So he said to ask you, were you Greg Gifford's TV stand at one point? And I don't know what this means at all.
Wait, was I Greg Gifford's TV stand?
I think that's how he put it.
I have not been, but he has been my TV stand. And
perhaps I had it the wrong way. So
no, you're so good.
His TV stand.
He, oh my goodness. And this is a funny part about being virtual. We don't have physical like problems or technical problems because Zoom is so easy. Yeah. Greg Gifford is my personal TV stand at conferences. But I think I need to return the favor when we resume international and local travel. So
I sure hope so. No, I hope I can meet you at one of these things soon. This has been so great. And
likewise.
I guess my last random question: did you have a favorite late night food place in East Lansing?
Mena's Joint. But also
correct.
But also BTB.
Wait, well, BTB?
Big Ten Burrito.
Oh, Big Ten Burrito, yes.
I don't know if it was there, like, and they changed names and stuff, but Mena's was like the spot.
Yes.
Oh my God, now I'm thinking of like so many other places, but
Mena's for guests who don't know, Mena's is basically you take a bunch of carbohydrates and you wrap it in carbohydrates, and then there's maybe some chicken in there and ranch dressing. It's delicious.
And it sits right next to and you know what? This is rare, and I didn't realize after I left Michigan and Michigan State. We had a freaking brewery on campus as one of our main local bars as like children to go to.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the norm. And so, like Harper's is what I'm talking about, obviously.
I know.
But,
I know.
Yeah, we had a brewery as one of our bars.
I know. It's unbelievable, isn't it? So, well, I miss it. Maybe if I don't see you at a conference, maybe I'll see you on campus at some Michigan State function. But you know, I enjoyed the conversation. I've learned a lot. So let's catch up again soon.
I hope so. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much.